As engineers reimagine the future of flight, they're not just looking at smaller, faster, or more intelligent aircraft. In some corners of the world, designers are questioning something even more fundamental. Do we need wings at all? This question has given rise to some of the most radical flying machines ever conceived. Craft that hover, glide, and lift, not with traditional wings, but with their very bodies. The idea of a wingless aircraft sounds like science fiction. And yet, in the 1960s, NASA embarked on a series of bold experiments to see whether a plane could fly using only its fuselage. These were called lifting bodies, strange, pod-shaped gliders that derived their lift from their aerodynamic shape rather than external wings. The concept was simple in theory. Design the aircraft's body to act as the wing. The underside would be curved to generate lift during high-speed descent. This design eventually paved the way for the space shuttle, but not without a series of high-risk, dramatic test flights. Among the most notable of these experiments was the M2 lifting body, a bizarre-looking craft that was released from a B-52 bomber at 50,000 feet. With no wings and weighing 2 tons, the M2 needed to glide at blistering speeds to remain airborne. On its 16th test flight, things went terribly wrong. As the M2 approached the ground, it began to roll out of control, spinning wildly just above the runway. It crashed at over 200 miles per hour, tumbling across the desert floor. Miraculously, the pilot survived, but the program was nearly canceled. Still, the promise of the lifting body design was too great to ignore. Fast forward to the present day, and a new generation of engineers is breathing life back into this once-abandoned concept. One of them is Barnaby Wainfen, a former B-2 bomber designer now focused on home-built aircraft. In a secret hangar in California, he has created a small civilian lifting body called the Facet Mobile. This peculiar craft doesn't look like any plane you've seen. It resembles a flying wedge, part stealth bomber, part paper airplane. The key difference is that it merges the wing, fuselage, and tail into a single integrated shape, creating a highly compact and efficient form. The result is a plane that can't stall or spin, two of the most common causes of fatal crashes in general aviation. Wainfen's Facet Mobile is lightweight, easy to control, and incredibly stable. And while it might resemble a UFO to the untrained eye, it represents a potentially revolutionary shift in aircraft safety and simplicity. In fact, it's part of a broader trend of aviation reinventing itself from the ground up, starting not with what has worked in the past, but with a blank sheet of paper. This spirit of reinvention isn't limited to the United States. In Russia, during the height of the Cold War, engineers were also dreaming big, sometimes shockingly big. In a classified project hidden deep within a Soviet airbase, a team of Russian designers built a craft that looked more like a spaceship than a plane. It was called the Taryelka, a disc-shaped aircraft designed to test the limits of non-traditional lift and stability. Early test footage, grainy and covert, shows scale models wobbling into the air. But the results were promising enough to greenlight a full-size prototype. This saucer-shaped vehicle could carry up to 12 passengers and was envisioned as the executive transport of the future. But as with many radical ideas, money, or the lack thereof, brought the project to a halt. Even so, the Taryelka was proof of concept. Wingless aircraft were possible, and they could be far more maneuverable than traditional designs. Another uniquely Russian innovation emerged from the waters of the Caspian Sea. Known as the ekranoplan, this massive machine operated on a completely different principle: ground effect. When an aircraft flies very close to the surface, whether over land or water, it creates a cushion of compressed air between itself and the ground. This drastically reduces drag and allows the craft to carry enormous loads at high speed. The Soviets capitalized on this with the creation of the KM ekranoplan, nicknamed the Caspian Sea Monster. At over 300 feet long, it was larger than a Boeing 747 and could carry up to 1,000 tons, a world record for aircraft lift. Powered by 8 jet engines, the Acranoplan skimmed just a few meters above the water at 300 miles per hour, transporting entire battalions of troops across oceans without detection by radar. But when the Cold War ended, so did the funding. The original Acranoplan was left to rot in dry dock, a fossil of a future that never came. Yet its legacy lives on. Designers today are still exploring how ground-effect vehicles could revolutionize cargo transport, humanitarian relief missions, and even luxury travel. These alternative approaches to flight challenge every assumption we have about aircraft. Who says a plane must have wings? Why should it soar high above the clouds when it can glide just above the ocean? Why carry engines on board when you can ride a beam of light? In the next segment, we'll explore precisely that. Laser-powered aircraft, propulsion without fuel tanks, and spacecraft that spin like tops. These aren't just experiments, they're the building blocks of our next space age. As aviation leaves traditional forms behind, one thing becomes clear: the sky is no longer the limit. Stay tuned to Infinity Beyond, where flight takes new form. No wings required.